aim for something like this, just a simple enclosure that will keep our computer inside with all the cables coming out of it nice and securely. I've looked around in the market for something suitable, like an enclosure, a plastic perhaps enclosure suitable for this project, but unfortunately I wasn't able to find anything, so decided to just make one myself. Right, so this is what we are aiming for. It's just a cardboard box with two holes. One is where the screen is going to go, and then the other opening in the back is the accessible area to be able to access the components on the Raspberry Pi. It's pretty simple. We'll start with the front of the box. It's where the screen is going to go, and the tools that you'll need for the process are a ruler like this, doesn't have to be a big one, a cutting tool, it's got a very sharp blade to be able to cut through the cardboard, and a couple of permanent markers to be able to mark the lines that we'll be cutting on later on. Alright, so the first thing that I would like to do before I actually do any markings or do any cutting at all is to secure the edges of the box. These edges with a bit of duct tape, just to add a bit of sturdiness to my box. So here's my duct tape. I'm going to start securing the edges just like this. It's going to take a while, so I'm going to fast forward this part of the video now. Okay, done with this bit. So now our box is a little bit sturdier, and especially the edges are not going to start shredding off and coming off with use over time. So the next thing I want to do is to cut an opening at the top part of the box so that the screen can sit nicely flat on it. So to do that, I need to find the center points for each of the sides of the box and then align them with the center points of the casing, the aluminium casing of the screen. And then I'm going to cut through and remove that section of the box. So I'll start by finding the center of the side of the box, and to do that actually I need a slightly larger ruler. So I'm going to use this ruler here and just look for the centers. So around here we've got roughly 10 centimeters. I'm just going to draw a nice long line. Same thing down the bottom, around 10 centimeters. The same thing for the smaller side. So the center would be around here. So 17. So it'll be around here. And just connect the line from one end to the other. Okay. Use a black pen to make those locations on the cardboard a bit more visible. Alright, so I know where the centers are for each side of the box. I need to do something similar for the Raspberry Pi touchscreen as well. And I've done that earlier. You can see small markings here. You can't see the one here, of course, but there's another one here and another one here. And what I want to do now is to align those dots on those markings on the screen with those on the box as close as I can. I think around there the markings align. Alright, the next thing to do is to create the outline where I will be cutting through the box. Now the idea is that I would like the black bevel, so this area here, to be sitting on the outside of the box, while the aluminium casing of the screen will be inserted inside the box. So I want to make markings that will indicate to me where to cut, so that only the bevel, the black bevel, stays outside the box, and then the rest, the aluminium casing, stays inside. And I want to do this in a way so that the aluminium casing snugs inside the box. So I'm going to place my ruler right against the aluminium casing of the screen, and then on the inside just draw my line as my marker on both sides. So do your marking on the inside of the ruler, just like that. That way the box will be holding a bit more tightly against the frame of the screen, and it will give a bit more support, like that. That was writing right on the tab of the protective film on the screen, so I had to pull it aside. Okay, that should be good. Now I'm going to remove the screen and just use my longer ruler and connect those lines. Okay. And that's about it. Now I can start cutting, and the part of the box that I'm going to cut at the inside is an inside area of the cardboard box that's inside those 4 lines. Alright, so really carefully now, let's start removing cardboard. So cut as straight as you can. get rid of this bit. Right, I need to do a little correction here. Just cut too far the inside. So I'm just going to trim the excess off. All right. Great. So we're done with the one side. Now for the other side, we need to cut another opening that will allow us access to the electronics inside the computer. So about this much should be enough. So I can take some measurements with my ruler. It's just rough measurements. This doesn't need to be exact, and for some of you it will be more, for others will be less. In my case, the short side should be, say, from here to here, about 80 centimeters. That's about 3¼ inches. And the other side would be about, from here to here, about 120 centimeters. And that's about roughly 4¾ inches. So let's do that on the other side of the cardboard now. Again, I need to find the centers for each side. So roughly here is one. And the other. And then for the other side, it's around here. And here. And I will connect those two dots. Okay, and this is the center for this side of the box, and I'd like to draw another smaller box in it that is 120 centimeters, millimeters wide times 80 centimeters height, which means that I've got 60 centimeters on one side, 60 centimeters on the other side, and then 80 and then 40 and 40 centimeters across. So let's try that. So I'm going to go to either side. Let's start with the short side, and I'm going to draw 40. Oh, yeah, I'm going to go to the center actually and draw 40 centimeters across. So here's the marking that shows me the 40 centimeters on one side and then the other 40 on the other side. And the same thing for the longer side. I want 60 and 60 on either side. So 60 centimeters on one side gives me this marking here, and another 60 on the other side gives me that marking there. Now, what I'll do is draw straight lines that are parallel to the edges of the box on either side. So that's one. Another one. Another one. And the last one. Done. So the last thing to do is to remove the cardboard from the inside of this box marked in orange, and I've got my opening for the electronics. If you don't have a cutting tool, then I suppose scissors can work as well. It's just it's going to be a bit harder to do this with a scissors. Done. Awesome. Let's roughly have a look at how the Raspberry Pi now fits in this box. So let's try to attach it. Okay, it is snug as I wanted, so I'm going to use my finger so you can probably see that. So one side just fits nicely, just like that. Now I'm going to use my finger to provide some support to the cardboard and then push against it. If I can, I might need to actually make the hole a bit bigger. Yes, actually I do. So this doesn't just quite fit well. There's a little bit of material that I need to remove. So I'm going to do that now. So I'm going to move a little bit of extra material. To make the case easier to put in. Very carefully, I'm going to remove a little bit of extra cardboard. Didn't care not to cut myself. Okay, let's try again now. Okay, one side fits. Okay. And here you go. It is very tight, but that's a good thing, so that the screen now that fits perfectly, if I turn the box upside down, is not going to fall off. It's because there's a bit of tension there that holds the screen in place, and plenty of room to access the electronics in the other side. Right, so there's just one last thing to do, and that is to add a little bit more duct tape around the edges of the openings so that they don't deteriorate over time with manipulation. So I'm going to add the duct tape and fast forward it at this point, since this bit is quite boring. Okay, so it looks good, job is complete. I am going to insert the Raspberry Pi. First, actually, I'll plug in the power, so I don't have to do that later. And have to reach for the little connector on the side of the Raspberry Pi. So I'm just going to I should have done this the other way around. Just wait for this to finish booting and then switch it off. Okay, and unplug. Pass the cable through the box and into the Raspberry Pi. And now I will insert the Raspberry Pi into the box. Now just one thing, when you do this, notice that there is a ribbon cable that connects the screen to its controller board. So what I want to do is to push that ribbon against the edge of the opening of the box first, like that, here, because that will cause less stress on that ribbon. And then, once I'm happy with this, I can work on the other side and push it in. So here on the other side, get power jumper wires in. Then you can see my fingers. I'm going to apply some pressure onto the edge of the cardboard box so that the screen snags against the opening and stays secure. Okay. Could have done maybe with another millimeter of cutting of opening here, but anyway, that's really snug now. The screen is not going anywhere. There you go. Nice and secure. Try that side as well. And just work your way through around the edges to make sure that nothing is sticking out. Done. Okay. So this is not falling out. There's a lot of tension there. It's going to keep the screen in place. Awesome. Now, the box with the computer inside just sits nicely on my desk. Another thing that you can do if your box is perhaps smaller is to put a small counterweight down the bottom, the bottom side of the box, just to provide a bit more support so that it stands on the desk without fear of falling on either side. The way that this box is now, most of the weight is towards the front of the box, so there is a small risk that your computer is going to fall forward like this. So if you put a bit of counterweight inside, then that risk will be mitigated. Great.